Whenever you are.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Planning and Zoning. And tonight we have a work session. And so I guess we need a roll call vote.
Commissioner Boren, Commissioner Hopefrey,
Here,
Commissioner Cohn,
Here.
Commissioner Clayton,
Here.
Commissioner Depler, Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Rubus,
Here.
Chair Beatty, Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
and Mayor Garrett.
so do we have a quorum and do we need one? We do have a quorum? Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much. All right, we have, would anyone like to approve the work session minutes from April 7th? Can I have a first?
Motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second? Jim, Mr. Rubus seconds. Can we have a voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Okay. Mr. Marshall abstains and Chair Beatty just walked in the door. And so I think that I'll let him take over. So Mr. Buttigieg, would you like to speak?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming a little early tonight. We know it's an imposition. And certainly a 5:15 hour doesn't work well or great for those that have employment elsewhere and have to get here during rush hour. So we do appreciate it very much. Tonight, we are going to have our second work session on signage. For consideration tonight. If you'll recall from our first work session, which was held in April, Randy Burkhead of Reed and Burkett Lighting Design was here and kind of gave us an overview of electronic message centers, some of the things that the industry is doing. After that work session, Mr. Newberry and I met with Mr. Burkett and another employee of Reed Burkett Lighting Design, Allison Todd, both who are in attendance tonight. And we went through a series of discussions about electronic message centers, and that's where Mr. Burkett and Ms. Todd will focus. The discussions, for the most part, made the assumption, and it isn't necessarily a foregone conclusion, that if we were to have electronic message centers, what is the best approach to regulate them in what I consider a dark environment of Wildwood generally. And so that's kind of the process that we employed to get to the point tonight where the presentation is going to be provided. It is an assumption that we are going to have electronic message centers. It's certainly not a given. And from that perspective, Mr. Burkett will be providing you some information he thinks is, in his opinion and Ms. Todd's opinion, integral if we do it. Also, while this has been ongoing with the Department of Planning and the consultant, our Economic Development Committee has been discussing electronic message centers And they came up with a list of items they would like the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider. And that's part of the memorandum that was provided for tonight's meeting. A key element of that particular recommendation from the Economic Development Committee is that it be limited to a certain type of use that has taxing authority. And that taxing authority defines them generally as fire districts, school districts, municipal governments, such as Wildwood, and any entity that can tax residents, property owners for their services. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, did you say that the economic, could you repeat again? They want the signs, the electronic message boards limited to the taxing?
Public entities with taxing authorities.
And who wants that limited to them?
The Economic Development Committee of City Council.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, and please ask questions. And that's 8 members of the 16-member City Council. And so they've been analyzing this particular issue as well. So from the perspective of the department, you have the consultant's information that'll be described tonight. You have a recommendation from the Economic Development Committee of City Council. And along with that, the department has provided background from past discussions relative to electronic message centers that were not supported and never came to fruition or became part of any regulation of the city. So you have 3 sources of information, and ultimately the department, based upon your questions and feedback tonight, will prepare a recommendation for your consideration as soon as July. At least that's the intent. If there's a lot of questions that can't be answered tonight, that may be delayed, but certainly we'd like to proceed forward. And then before we conclude tonight, I do want to go over those sign regulations that I mentioned that have been kind of coming to us from different sources, but more of the traditional type of signage. And with that, and the chair's permission, I'll invite Mr. Burkett to the podium.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
When the Economic Development Group in City Council recommended the use probably in those instances or businesses that are within a taxing district or authority. So that means that a religious facility would not be included?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you, commissioners, council member. Good to see you again. And not to put you to sleep with nerdy items here tonight, but yeah, I got it. Thank you. So as Joe pointed out, technically, we're going to be talking about electronic message centers. EMC is the jargon we kind of use in the industry, in the signage industry. So, but there are others. Could just call them signs if you want to. We're going to talk about the nature of these elements and focus a bit on how they might be used in Wildwood and what are the pluses and minuses of those things. And obviously, we're not making that decision tonight, nor am I involved in that, but I want you to understand how these operate basically and their strengths and weaknesses and how you might want to take that into account. So with that, first of all, you all can see the screen. Is that right? Okay. Just quick TOC here, the types of things we're talking about. I'm going to try to keep my remarks to 20 minutes or so, and then full scale questions. Having said that, I guess it's all right to get questions during this, but if you think it's something you might forget otherwise, that would be fine. Okay. Well, as I was saying, EMC, electronic message centers. The definition there, I hope you don't mind. I'm not going to read a lot from slides, but this one I will. A sign that utilizes computer-generated messages or some other electronic means of changing copy. These signs include displays using incandescent and fluorescent lamps, as well as LEDs, LCDs, which are liquid crystal displays, and even flipper matrices, if you've ever seen those before, the little signboards. used to use them in baseball stadiums and such. And so this is the basic definition from the industry. You can see a couple of examples there. As we get into this, I want to talk a bit about the usage of these boards, and I'm not going to do a deep dive into how they can be used, but we'll talk about the common uses. And I'm sure you'll come up with questions at some point about perhaps other uses or maybe uses you don't want to see. These next couple of slides, I may have had them in the last time. I think we were just talking in-house with Joe and Travis, but this happens to show physically in the sketch a billboard, but the basic concept of signage light or lighting for signage dwells on visibility, of course, but also output and intensity. So you see here a couple of nerdy terms there. Intensity is also called candle power in our industry. We don't use candles much anymore, but candelas is the term we use. In this case, a sign is going to produce a visible message, and we're going to talk specifically about electronic ones. But even if it was a billboard or any kind of display, that sign to be seen must have light at night, especially. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about daytime too. But it has to have a certain amount of brightness to be seen. And one of our biggest concerns with electronic message centers is not having too much light or improper light in some areas. You've been to, I mentioned this, I think, in my remarks last time. You go to a big city, you might see large billboards. If you go to Chicago, or maybe the best example, New York's Times Square, you see a lot of these message centers. But the sign produces, whether it's self-luminous or whether it's illuminated like that we've had for many, many years, it's not the illumination that's on the surface, it's how much comes back. If it's a black sign, you're going to get very little return. If it's a very white billboard, in some case, it might be much brighter. And there's two ways we think about this, and how do we, there are other ways, but two that are in current practice in this industry. And what do we see, and how can it be measured? In the case of light being emitted by a signage surface, whether again self-propagated or reflected light, it reaches the human eye at some point, assuming you're in the field of view. And that sign at that same point, we can measure how much light, the quantity of light, as well as the quality, if that can be necessary in some cases, color and so forth. Some of those things won't be readily used perhaps in these applications. And there are two ways to satisfactorily quantify how much light is on a surface of a sign. In this case, you'll see something there called a foot candle meter. I was going to bring mine tonight, but I left it aside my office desk. But you've seen them. There are many kinds of illuminance meters, we call them, foot candle meters, I guess, to the ones who don't do this every day. And it measures how much light is incident on a surface. So if you're looking at my face and someone said, well, how much light, you can see me, I could take a meter and put that in front of my face, and I could say I have 10 foot candles on my face, and that's how you see me. Same with signs. So in this case, I'm going to come back to this in a moment. You could, with your human vision, turn that source around and face the light as it comes toward you. And I'm going to compare that with the other measure of being able to quantify this. So a foot candle meter can be used where you're viewing something and how much light that produces in your eyes. It's certainly more than just the sign, but what component of that sign lighting value will be, it can be measured with a conventional foot candle meter or illuminance meter. There's a second way of this is done in our industry, and that's using what's called candelas per square meter, or nits. Some of you probably remember that from the last time around, and I know it was caused a chuckle, but basically what this does, it's an instrument that has a 1 degree field of view, and you aim it at any surface you would like, and it can tell you how bright in nits or candelas per square meter, how bright that surface is. It's 1 degree, so the further you are away, the more of the area you actually illuminate or you actually measure. But that is another way of quantifying how much light is in the field of view. Those two, we're going to talk about why we feel, and I think so far in our discussions, feel one is superior for our use here in Wildwood and most cities of this size. We'll get into that. I'm not going to have you read all these tonight, and I'm just going to talk quickly about them. The first one of the things that we'll want to do with, EMCs is to establish some measure of what's enough light and how much is too much light. In the case of the criteria for this kind of project, this kind of sign, you can see the one on the left as I face, hopefully as you face it as well. The one on the left, you can see the sign looks quite bright concerning the surrounding. And in fact, chances are that would be glary to somebody maybe driving down the street in this area or down the highway, and it may be an interesting look, but it might be more light than one would need to see it. And perhaps more importantly, we don't want to introduce glare and other ways, squinting and shielding your eyes and that sort of thing. The one on the right-hand side, on the other hand, might suffer from the opposite problem. That surface that's illuminated just below where it says Parkside Dental Team, that surface is actually much brighter than the one on the left. However, the ambient light in this area, including the reflected light from snow, washes out that visibility quite a bit. So one could argue that's not bright enough. And that's the sort of the most difficult thing about sign lighting is how do you react, or how do you use two different conditions? How do you deal with those going from daytime to nighttime? We're going to talk about that for a few moments. So what we're trying to find out here is not only, I think we all would agree that this can happen, but how do we control that? Are there limits? So if we look at illumination limits, for example, the difference between, in this case, an off and solid message measurements, EMC, the measurement criteria shouldn't exceed about 0.3 of a foot candle. Now, there's been a lot of research done in signage, and this is using that foot candle meter I was talking about, which I would say that anyone in this room could go out tonight, have an illuminance meter, in a matter of 90 seconds, you'd know how to measure how much light is coming off that sign. And in nighttime settings, in cities such as Wildwood and actually more remote areas, the light level of 0.3 of a foot candle has been used now for about 12 or 14 years as a standard for how much additional light is propagated toward the viewer in using foot candles or illuminance. I'm not going to talk anymore right now about the individual measurements of small areas of that sign. So let me just go to the next one. You'll notice the difference here. Well, let me go back before. The one on the left, we could argue there, that sign, it's dusk, but the sign's not bright enough. Here you have a bright background, and now the sign has to become brighter or else you don't see it. On the right-hand side, there the sign is not bright enough, even though it's actually darker. And there are ways of computing what's appropriate in a given viewing situation, and you'll see that here in a moment or two. Once again, what we'd like to have happen here is that it dims from day to night. So during the day, driving down the street here, we might have as much as 5,000 or 6,000 foot candles in the line of sight from the sun, the sky, and basically sky brightness. And if you had a sign that had very low output, chances are it would be washed out completely and you wouldn't be able to read it. And you start to see that on the right-hand side, just in a twilight situation. So typically, the way this change is made from day to night is to use dimming or presets. And I'm going to show you both of those in a moment. And basically, it means the sign would have two lives. One during the day that communicates information and messages that would have a certain degree of brightness that would fit into the field of view comfortably. Same thing at night, a different light level, a different quantity of light would be available. Same sign, simply by adding or subtracting light from that sign. So the sign doesn't, the message doesn't change. If it's saying, excuse me, if it's saying pancake breakfast tomorrow 1:30, and you see it in the evening, it has the brightness, you can read it easily, it's legible, it's not glary. The next day you see it again, but it's much, much brighter, but the contrast is such that it's very comfortable there as well. That's the key. You can overburden your nighttime environment by not having a proper sign that regulates the amount of light used to convey the message. And today, frankly, there's no reason you shouldn't do that. Someone could say, well, no, I'm not going to spend the extra $300 for onboard automatic dimming for my sign. I can cut that corner. Well, you can't, or you shouldn't, especially in communities like yours. Now, let's look at this a little. You might say, is it really that easy? And I guess it's not really that easy. The meter I was talking about is what I showed, I mentioned earlier in the conversation. It allows you to measure the amount of light coming from the sign. And the way that you say, well, how do I know I have too much or too little? The way it is measured is, what is it like with the light on, the message center on, and without the message center on? And you basically find out you can't be above 0.3 of a foot candle in what's called a dark adapted conditions. Your eyes are adapted to much lower light levels. If you have that same sign I just mentioned, and we were in New York, the sign wouldn't be nearly bright enough. And so that doesn't work. And then it's typically done with photocells, and we'll touch on that briefly. Let me tell you what this means. This can be done by the teams here at Wildwood that can take those measurements. We take these measurements a lot for other communities from time to time, and they're very straightforward and repeatable. They're things that can be well-defined and enforced, if you will. So in this case, we're talking about the fact that the meter is brought out to the field and it's put on a tripod at a certain distance. And I'll tell you what that means. Depending on the size of the reader board, in this case, the EMC, and right now we're currently saying, I believe, here in, excuse me, here in Wildwood, the maximum square footage of signage area is 50 square feet. Isn't that correct? Yes. So whether it's how that 50 square feet happens is up to the people who are designing the sign, but that's the maximum here. You see a couple of images as we go through here now quickly. The first thing must be done in order to take these. You find out what the total square footage of the electronic sign is, in this case, close to 50 square feet, I believe. And then in order to measure these illuminances, the square footage has to do with how far you must be away from the sign. So a sign that's maybe only 25 square feet of luminous area, well, you need to be closer to do those measurements. The further you get away, the more area you can use as the basic ambient illuminance. Hoping this is the right. Here, I'll just show you this. You can see if your sign is 20 square feet, then the total area of the sign is 25 square feet. Then you need to be 50 feet away from that sign before you do your baseline measurements, on and off. So if you're in a fairly wooded area, you happen to come upon a small church or community center. I'm using terms here. I'm not sure who's going to be in this net and who isn't. But if it's a fairly low ambient, if you add up to 0.3 of a foot candle or higher than that, it's going to look quite bright and be unacceptable in most settings such as this. Conversely, if you're in town center, that might be different. But mostly in the communities here in Wildwoods, I think you're looking at 0.3 of a foot candle as a maximum measurement of the illuminance. You can see some of the other square footages there. So, and it's also important to look at them as completely solid white at night. You can imagine a very white screen versus, let's say, a dark screen with mid-grain levels or mid-level text. You have to look at the worst condition, fully white with a small amount of text. You want the worst case condition. You don't know what people will do with their signs. There are ways to limit the amount of light that these can generate, and I'm going to talk about that during daytime here momentarily. The measurement of the brightness I was mentioning, I'm not, again, going to go through these, but there's several steps, but it's quite straightforward once you get it up on a tripod. And you turn it off, you take the baseline measurements, you turn it back on, you look at worst case scenario, all white background and so forth. And that must then be below 3/10, and that gives them their the amount of output they're allowed to use. And you can preset signs like this now. Very common, very common. You're going to see something here that's one step beyond that, which is now becoming very common, and I think it ultimately should be in communities like Wildwood. As I mentioned about daytime and nighttime conditions, and during the night you must have, you would use far less light in order to communicate than during the day. You would need far more light and intensity in order to communicate that same message, all other things considered equal. Signage is now available to do that. The technology is now available to do that automatically based on time of day. It can be done with astronomical time clock. It can be done with photocells and several other techniques, which the sign community is embracing now. So it would automatically provide less light at night as you start to slip in past the twilight and into an evening. The message may still be the same, but it now is appropriately scaled visually for the environment. So for an example, I wanted to show you, this happens to be a quick graph we did of March 21st, the spring solstice and equinox, not solstice, sorry. But nonetheless, you can see if you look at the far left, 1 a.m. in the morning, beginning at midnight, 1 a.m. in the morning, and so forth. If you happen to have a sign that is communicating at all hours, it would be at the very lowest permitted illuminance at nighttime. And as I mentioned, 3/10 of a foot candle, not very much light. As you move along and it comes 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, finally 6 a.m., and the sun now is above the horizon, and now in order to see that message, you're going to need a greater output from your sign. In this case, there are two ways. We're just showing two ways of doing this. One is to transition from night to day slowly. It's almost, we call it fade adjustment. We do it a lot. I think we even have faders on the lighting controls here in this room where you would hit the button, it just doesn't go off. It fades maybe over 5 or 10 seconds to darkness if you're going to see something. In this case, the sign can dim from its lowest output to full output, or whatever daytime full output is. And that's what happens at the beginning of the day. And then finally, at the end of the day, the opposite happens. It begins to go into night. And so the daytime illuminance begins to fall away and reaches that 3/10 at the end of the hour. Now, I'll be the first to admit, probably only 1 in 10 of the controlled signs are doing this right now, but it is much more available. What a lot of them are doing is strictly a photocell. And what that means is at some point, maybe halfway between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m., bang, it happens. It changes from the bright or the dim to the bright and vice versa. That's something we can control or can talk about in more detail later. We've even seen that as folks are having curfew times. Just put up the same screen with an additional graphic. You can see, well, why have the sign with the pancake breakfast glowing at night from 1 a.m. to 4 in the morning? Is it important that 2 or 3 people might miss the pancake announcement? So those are just decisions. Should there be curfews? Should there be as absolute darkness as possible, even with these signs, and bring them down to zero at that point? The one thing that this is my guess, but in most communities, it's nice to go through those measurement techniques I mentioned, but more often than not, maybe you don't have control over a sign. Somebody says there's a sign up on the XYZ expressway and it looks too bright. And who owns it? Well, they don't even live here in town. You can take these measurements without having to have people there to turn lights on and off and so forth. And literally you go there and you cover it up, worst case, and then you take it off and you look at the difference. That seems like a silly thing to talk about, but we find that happens maybe 1 out of 3 times when someone complains or feels that a sign is too bright. It's very difficult for them to get somebody, well, nobody knows how to operate this. And so that's just something that we would have to include, I think, in what we do here. Excuse me. Before I go into these next 2 slides, I'm almost done. Are there any questions? I'm going to go back one. Any questions on the ones we are just started from? I'll just acknowledge. Yes. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Burkett. By the way, I was looking at your portfolio. It's very impressive. And just admiring what you do there, because it's just amazing what lighting could do to a structure, the exterior of a building. And so just wanted to point that out. But I was thinking of it, and I'm glad you call it the curfew time, because that was a thought I had, that if we were going to go down the path, we would probably want to just have a curfew, given just kind of how dark the area is at night. And my concern is more the how bright it would shine to any, neighboring structure or building or, home. So do you have any examples of like reasonable curfew times? Like I was toying around with the idea, is it 9 o'clock in the evening till 6 in the morning or something like that? Or have you seen other cities do something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it does depends on the community. Much of what we see is almost everything we see is before midnight. There are some who want to do a 10 o'clock during the week and maybe midnight on weekends. That's not unusual. But that can be, that's something that you might, it would vary depending on the area. In some areas of Wildwood, I could see 7 o'clock. It's dark. I don't want to see anything. But realistically, people still go out to dinners and they're doing this and that. So we find that 10 o'clock is a pretty good cutoff. Midnight on weekends is also good. I've heard that a lot.
Right. And then you did bring up, and I think also that's a key part, that fader, whether it works like with the photo cell, or if the technology today can support more of that gradual fading where it's not obvious. I think that would have to be a key, essential part of it.
Ideally, it would be unfair to say, oh, and that stuff doesn't cost anymore. Well, it does. It's not a $10,000 thing, but if you want to have those kinds of controls innate to the sign and not have to worry about doing it yourself. There are some 10 years ago, people were dim it down a little bit, Charlie, and they don't do that anymore. It's done automatically. And even the crudest of them does have a photocell, and there'd just be a high and a low, day and night. And they just pick halfway in between. Okay, let's switch over to the night. And if you want to make an error, you don't want it to be too glaring. If somebody misses one, if it misses one of the messages because it wasn't activated soon enough, then that's okay. You err on the side of caution.
Well, I think the first time I noticed that the technology had this, I had noticed that probably on one of the highways driving, I saw a billboard. And I think the photocell had gone defective because at night it was just so bright.
Yes. Yeah.
Compared to what you typically saw. So that's when I realized there is a difference, and probably does that.
They do have options for default. If one doesn't work, you certainly don't want highway brightness at noon in the middle of your evening. So it would default to the worst case, in some, depending on how you look at it, to the lowest output. So you'd still maybe have what you need at night, but at night, you wouldn't see it during the day in that case. But it can be repaired. And photocells, right now, as I was saying, most of them just say high, low. That's all we do. As soon as it hits this illuminance level, we're going to switch that way. And as we get to the evening, we're going to switch back here.
The rest of it is, I think you're about to cover it. I think that's the change, how frequently it changes and all.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
apologize for coming in late, but I
No,
did see that as well. So
I do
think that's
want to,
the
there
key.
was one thing in my notes I didn't want to mention, just a couple sentences. Most people say, well, wow, that's a bright sign, and you're annoyed by it. Fine. Well, if you're in a dark adapted state, in state, not the state of Missouri, a dark adapted lies. If you're on a fairly dark road and you see a very bright, we've seen it with headlights all the time, bright sign, it takes your eyes anywhere from 3 to 10 seconds just to get back to where you were. So if there happened to be a rabbit or a deer in front of you, just beyond the sign, your eyes, they close because of the brightness. It's just human physiology. So if it's real bright and you're doing this and it's too bright, you get past it, all of a sudden the dark isn't quite as visible as it was. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to get that.
So on my very first note, it's about the eye thing that you talked about last week. And so what is there you talk about these 0.3 foot candles. What is the sweet spot for the eye being able to readjust quickly as you're driving down Highway 109?
Dark, one thing I'm going to show you toward the end are what we call lighting zones, which you don't quite have here in Wildwood yet, but that just give me, early on I talked about the Times Square being so bright. There your eyes are closing down because otherwise you'd be squinting the whole night. In this case, you drive, some of these times I drive into Wildwood and it's remarkable that some areas are really beautifully dark and quiet. And so that 0.3 of a foot candle is typically a high watermark, but in innately darkened areas, it's less than that. So it is a sliding scale. Not so much that, okay, you're 0.217 foot, it's not that. There's really typically 2 rungs on that lower ladder, one in what's called an LZ1 area, and LZ1. I'll show you that in a minute. And that can be even lower than in the output. That's a good question. Thank you. Other questions? If not, let me keep going. There'll be more time. I don't have a lot more material, so I'll be able to get away. Okay, so I have 2 slides here that are a lot of information here, and we don't have to dig down into these quickly. But there are some other things we have to take into account. I gave you the big picture, so let's look at these. So the top one, the rate of message changes. What's right? What's wrong? What's bothersome? What is distracting, and so forth. And frankly, there's not a complete consensus about that. But there are some guidelines. 10-second minimum time intervals for messages is a good one. If the display is there, you're not trying to read things that are changing every few seconds. The display should be readable, but not having to catch back and forth to see it. Instantaneous message changing. At first, you might think, oh, that's strobe effect, but it literally is instantaneous, and there's not even a change in brightness or in the message that would even get people's attention. So you'll see the ones, I've seen quite a few in the St. Louis area like that, and they work very well. Now you don't want to do those every second or two, because then it would become bothersome. 3 to 4 seconds for public service info, time, temperature. I don't know whether that would even be considered. I think we've talked about, probably not in this first pass, but they're used for a lot of other things, and those messages need to come, often are coming faster, or they're what you will allow them to do. That'll be a big discussion. The message is the size of the message. Of course, the size of the signs being allowed here are not enormous. And typeface, you can put them really tiny if you want to, but no one will be able to read them. So there are guidelines for that. It's well documented. So if someone's coming up over the hill and they have just a few seconds to read something, the owners want to know what size typeface you'll need in order to get that, as well as contrast. Having a black letter on a white background, that's pretty good contrast, but having maybe a red background or a red letter on a pink background, it's harder to see. So there's a lot of visibility issues, but there's good guidance for that available. Flashing, animations, movement, I don't think any of that's going to be allowed, but I don't know. A lot of communities we deal with say, no, we don't want any of that. I don't want any scrolling and other effects. Sometimes they say, well, maybe on the main drag we do that. So that's something that we can talk about some other time, but that's the good news and bad news of these. They can do almost anything you can think up, better or for worse. Who's going to use EMC signs? I'm not asking that question, but that's some of the questions you'll have to ask. I know that there was a comment earlier about churches and it had something to do with the potential taxing and so forth. Those sorts of things, of course, aren't in our world, but they are used quite a bit by schools and civic centers and things like municipal buildings and buildings like this even. I do want to really point out this one at the very top, day and night. So think about this, set the maximum screen output from the nighttime condition. So let's say we have the sign and at night in an area in one of your more rural areas or quiet areas, and it looks great. All right. However, the daylight thing is going to come up. So one option is to use a photocell that simply does a day-night changeover. So you wait and wait. You don't want it to be too bright if you're coming out of the daylight and into the darkness. You don't want to wait till 15 minutes of glare. You're going to want to knock it down earlier. And those can all be preset with the photocell. Photocell can be as tight as you want to. And we find that it's better to miss a message or two than to have one that's just way too bright and glary, and you get complaints about them. A second option is an astronomical time clock, which would initiate the display levels for nighttime. And it would, based on the day of the year, it would react where, let's just say it's, I don't know, 10 minutes before full twilight or 10 minutes before darkness. There are different terms for those, but you could do that with just nothing but a time clock, internal time clock. Option 3, transition a setting, maybe 30 to 60-minute fade rate, which we talked about earlier. Then you'd have probably perfect visibility for that hour. Not perfect, but I mean, is let's just say the most discernible visibility by doing that. Make it's a very slow fade rate. No one, you could sit there and watch for it. You wouldn't see it fading. Yes.
On option 2,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like how in the winter, so often around here, you get really cloudy, overcast days. And even though sunset is like 4:45 or 5 o'clock, it is pretty dark at 4:30. If you're on an astronomical clock for that hour, would it look overly bright potentially?
It could be, but you don't have to. You can be more conservative in when you turn it down. And we tend to lean that way. I'd rather have somebody miss something or what is that there? And as opposed to being distracted or in a negative way. So yes, that can happen. Even on a sunny day, it could be thunderstorms rolling in at that time, and it might be almost dark. There'll be times when it just won't work the way you want it to.
In those cases, would it be better if it were on the photocell, I guess?
I think so. Yeah, they both can work. Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, I was thinking, I think photocell makes it the easiest because I worry about all the installation that forgets to change the time zone from Pacific to Central. or I don't know if these clocks sync up and then all of a sudden you've got a sign that's completely misaligned with the time. So it seems like PhotoCell just takes care of all those.
Photocells has the fewest number of working parts, so to speak. It's just a cell that sees how much illuminance is. Now, look, can they get broken? And yeah, there are ways of that happening too.
But I think that takes care of like the scenario that the chair brought up, if we have that, or maybe we get a solar eclipse and
Okay.
it'll take care of that too, I bet, if we have the photos.
See it.
I think one of those hits here.
Good. That was a good question. Was there any more on that particular subject? Okay. EMC, commercial, non-commercial applications, that's not really part of this discussion, I don't think. But if it does come to be, some people are going to want it. So it's just a matter of what the guidelines will be for that. Display heights, I believe, are also limited to 10 feet total, right? Yeah. So a sign could be 50 square feet, and but 10 feet in the air might be even. It can be on pedestals even, as long as it's.
We actually define monument signs to avoid them being on a pylon or poles. They have to be on a base, adhere to grade.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thanks. Joe, you probably told me. Other considerations. The current intent is not to include commercial settings and town centers, and if that's the case, at least in the first pass, then they're going to unfortunately bring up some things that will we may have to have yet a couple of other layers to this, but for most of Wildwood, I don't think that's the case. I'm going to talk to the second thing there, proximity to sensitive lighting zones that are not allowed. And in some areas where it is inherently dark, you probably should not need that kind of sign or use that. It's almost better to have a reflective sign that maybe your headlights provide or you can put a much lower illuminance on those nighttime areas, those inherently dark areas. I think that it's amazing how bright a 1/10 of a foot candle could be. How remember when I was a kid, I used to squint at the full moon and laying out in a field in a sleeping bag with my friends, and oh my God. But you can read. So the point is, there'll be areas in your town, your city, that should use a lower threshold, and that can be defined. I mentioned lighting zones. This is not really to talk about lighting zones because that's a different issue, I think, for your overall master plan, perhaps. Currently, lighting zones are divided into 5 categories. You see them there, LZ0 to LZ4. There's going to be one more of these. LZ0 right now is really just for national parks. The kinds of restrictions, you couldn't even use them here. Very little area for even in Wildwood. But they're bringing in one that's slightly less severe than LZ0. Let me just show you, and I'm not gonna have you read that. But you can see LZ0, 1, 2, and just talking about Wildwood in general, if they use the newer LZ0 with the asterisk for dark communities, inherently dark communities, not Yosemite or Yellowstone, but Wildwood, then there'll be an LZ0 asterisk or whatever it's going to call, and then Z1 and Z2. And I'll just show you one. So here's the current LZ0. Areas where the natural environment will be seriously and adversely affected by lighting includes disturbing the biological cycles of flora and fauna, and detracting from human enjoyment and so forth. I think it would be nice to feel that Wildwood has moments like that in places, and that's great. But I think some of this is language is too strident. So they're coming up with this LZ0 asterisk, which would fit well in about 2/3 of Wildwood, I think. And here are the others, the LZ1, which is called low ambient, where lighting might adversely affect flora and fauna or disturb the character of the area. The vision of human residents and users adapted to low light levels and so forth. And then there's this third one, LZ2, which is doubles the 20 candelas per square meter you see there. And this one is probably most of Wildwood, the areas that are down toward the main town, center city, areas of human activity where the vision of human residents and users is adapted to moderate light levels, and they can be typically used for safety, security, convenience, and so forth. So I think there's a chance as you move forward, and this does have impact on signage, and that is where you can use signage and still meet the lighting zone narratives that will curb fit very well for Wildwood. Yeah, I guess it's just we wish we all had that far left. And we've been looking at zoning districts and so forth, not doing any work here per se, but I've always been fascinated at how much of your community is still pretty good, pretty pristine, and hope we can keep it that way at night. I think that's it for prepared material. Other questions, discussions? Whether you have questions, see there's other names on the wall, and whether there's other people that.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of cost would be entry level for a signage? Where do you begin to get a signage that would meet the parameters like what the mayor has discussed?
That's a very good question. I'm afraid I can't tell you. We don't do a lot of signage work. And when we do, it's part of a bigger project, and we're not specifying signs and so forth. Be happy to provide that in the next week or so, and give you some spot levels so you get in a sense of, in other words, what is on-off photocell only for 150 square feet versus astronomical time clock with midpoint, set point, and high point. So we'll see what we can provide. Good question. Thank you.
Mayor Garitano.
Do cities get into the specifics, like what types of fonts are used or sizes? And again, you may have covered this. I apologize if you did, but I just was wondering, because I think when we talk about our signage, like over a business, we have some specific requirements. So I'm wondering if we need to think about that if we go down the path of entertaining this with electronics.
Well, that's a good question. I think life safety issues are dictated on signs, of course, like a stop sign. You can't have STOP really small. No one's going to see it. You're going to run the stop sign. So that stuff is code. But when you go to message boards, unless they're switching over to an emergency transmission, I don't think there's a lot of demands. However, there are guidelines for viewing distances and so forth. So beyond that, we have a couple of folks in our in our firm that have helped write those ordinances. I think we have some of that information, if that might be useful to you. But yes, typeface. I mean, you don't want Gothic maybe, or different types or script, and people do that because they think it's cool.
Yeah. I think that's where I worry about if we don't have guidelines that could be kind of uncontrolled.
Yeah, you could, at the very least, you could say recommended, because you don't want to, well, I shouldn't say this. I wouldn't want to micromanage people's, signs. That should it be giant letters? Should it be small? But I don't know.
Do you, off the top of your head, if you can recall, do you know what cities, again, the top of what comes to mind, have done a real good job with what we're trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, there aren't a lot of them here in Missouri, unfortunately. There's quite a few in Arizona, New Mexico, California. I can send you some of the. We've got single page synopsis of how they've chosen to handle their signage and other things in some cases.
Yeah, I think that if we're going to entertain this for Wildwood, we're probably going to be at the forefront in the area of like trying to make sure it's a controlled environment with the signage. And again, very limited to where we probably would allow that use.
Okay.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yeah, a couple questions. The 50 square foot is two 25-foot facing each way, not one 5 by 10.
Actually, the 50 square foot size limitation can be a double face sign. So 50 on one side, 50 on the other.
Is that the average size we see up and down the road? That seems awfully large.
No, primarily through the commercial districts, the C8 plan commercial district, we usually limit it to about 30 square feet.
Yeah, I was just thinking more on schools and stuff too. So, second question, because if we were to go in this direction, we know there's going to be people constantly challenging, it's too bright, it's not right. Is there a licensing fee or an inspection fee for having somebody actually go and check that once a year? I had some experience in Town and Country with signs on 64. In Town and Country, you know, they would occasionally say you need to have the sign people come out and do another inspection. That was been years ago. And they weren't anything digital. They were just, you could have 3 colors, red, white, and brown. That was it. So you had to make the most of it. I'm just curious that if it is something and there would be inspections required, are there companies who do that inspection? Because when people come in and tell us, you know, well, we have to have this sign, the next thing they'll say is, we don't have any money in our budget to have somebody come out and service it or to do that type of thing. Or they'll come out and say, we're going to put the sign up ourselves. And they're not qualified. They've never done it before. And then we end up with people arguing about it. So not just, those are just the kind of complaints that I know kind of surface. And if we could avoid something like that, I think that's a good way to do it.
There are at least 2 companies in the St. Louis area who specialize in servicing EMCs. You probably want to know who they are, and I have to look at my notes. But whether they do them yearly, once a year spot checks, that kind of thing, you could ask for that, I guess, as part of your ordinance. But yeah, some will just fail. They need defaults as well, these signs, so that you don't. And God, you got to get somebody up the hill there. It's horrible. So that has to be done for. But the yearly maintenance, or every 2 years, or whatever it happens to be, that's a good idea.
Commissioner Humphrey?
So thank you very much. My question is for Mr. Vunich. So last time we talked about kind of all the lighting as far as like the LEDs and things of that nature, and the light behind the static signs as well. And we talked about the eye adjustment time. And then this week was all about the message centers, right? The electronic message centers. And so, and then you told us that the city council, the economic development wanted us to limit it maybe to taxing entities. And then somebody else mentioned here, schools. And I know that we have a lot of areas where we have, like Lafayette comes to mind automatically, because you've got Babbler, you've got Lafayette, you've got St. Alban Road. Those are all, I believe, in residential areas, but on a main thoroughfare. And so I guess my question to you, it's like the $1 million question, is when are we going to get into addressing what types of signs will allow in what areas? Because I think when we do that, will we have to have lighting zone districts first established?
The intent of the department is to have a report with recommendation as early as the July Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So approximately 1 month from tonight.
Well, I mean, because I see you have other things on here that you wanted to talk to us about, and we kind of haven't talked about them yet. That's why I was asking. Maybe I'm trying to let you off the hook for July, because I feel like we still have quite a bit that we have not covered.
Mr. Humphrey, that's fine. I don't want to rush the process, but I also want to be cognizant that there are others that have been involved in the process that would like to see some conclusion sooner than later. But if the commission feels that another work session in July to kind of start talking about the things we need to do if we're going to allow electronic message centers and get down to maybe the details more so than the general concepts, that's fine. And we are at about 6:20, so I don't have much time to go over the other regulations that the department is recommending should be considered for change.
Right. So my personal ask is that we don't do that in July, because I think that there is more of a discussion that should be had about some of the things that we haven't addressed yet. And I think that the information that he's given us is, food for thought and gives you we need a little time to chew on it. And so I feel like if you're asking my opinion, which you haven't yet, but that is my opinion, is that we have
And
another work session.
both Mr. Newberry and I want your all's opinion. Ultimately, you have to make the recommendation to city council, and city council has to basically weigh that recommendation relative to, is it good, bad, or indifferent? So from the perspective of the department, if we need one more work session, that's fine. As you know, with the subdivision and development regulations, we ended up, I think, with 4 work sessions to get through all of the topics that were necessary for us to consider. So never rush, I guess, is the rule of thumb.
Right. I want to get it right the first time, or at least as right as we can get it the first time. Thank you very much.
Mayor Garitano? do you
Yeah,
have-
I think what I'm going to say probably echoes what Commissioner Helfrey is talking about, is that we're learning a lot. We'll be the first to admit I'm not an expert, and I don't know how many feel are experts, but we are learning about this. So thank you to the department and Mr. Burkett to share this with her, but with us. But all these parameters that are involved with the signs, message boards, I would probably expect that you'll be putting together kind of your best recommendation based on best practices, what you've seen in other cities, perhaps comments that you have heard from us. And then we can then react to that. And if there is a specific item that we wish to amend or change, we can discuss that. But I would think that we'd want something to react to. And that way, then we can determine whether to move it forward. So probably we'll need another session. But I think you're getting where we're coming from.
And based upon your comments, Mayor Garitano, I think it's only fair that, yes, you have something from the department to kind of begin winnowing the discussion down. Because right now we have a lot of information, good information that's been provided by our consultant. We have information from other communities in the St. Louis metropolitan area. So there's a lot to kind of review and kind of pull together. And I will say, in the opinion of the department, and I believe Mr. Burkett said it once, if not multiple times, we do still have a pretty nice dark environment. And to lose that to the benefit of come to the pancake breakfast tomorrow morning just doesn't seem right. So if we're going to do this, we need to do it from the perspective of the department more surgically. And so, yes, if another work session is desired, we can be prepared to kind of help you get that conversation to the core issues.
Councilmember Marshall?
I have to tell you, I think the taxing district is a win-win-win, because we just cannot be the sign police. And every organization will throw all their money in it, and then you're going to have to go take a sign down. I think the taxing district thing is really a good way to address who can put in an expensive sign and who will be responsible to the residents who live in the area. So I just think that's a great big step.
Well, certainly it limits the applications in the city of Wildwood substantially. But I will also tell you on the flip side, from an enforcement issue, taxing authorities are the worst to deal with.
Point taken. Does anyone have anything else?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
if there would be an inclination on the commission's part, could we have a motion to hold a third work session in July? And a second, and we can do that by a voice vote. Then I'll be able to report to others that have been following this particular matter, the commission.
Motion by Commissioner Helfrey, second by Commissioner Clayton. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. We'll be back in July.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, thank you. It's about 6:22, so if there's a motion to adjourn the work session, you can stretch your legs for a few minutes.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. We'll be
Thank you
back
all.
at 6:30. and Zoning Commission to order. Tonight on the agenda, we have one public hearing, two information reports, one site development plan recommendation report, and one other item. Can I get a roll call of commission members, please?
Commissioner Bourne.
Here.
Commissioner Bourne is on Zoom. Commissioner Helfrey.
Here.
Commissioner Cohn.
Here.
Commissioner Clayton.
Here.
Commissioner Depler. Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Rubis.
Here.
Chair Beatty.
Here.
Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
Mayor Garitano.
All right, thank you. Let's hear. Can I get an approval of the minutes from the May meeting, please? Motion by Commissioner Clayton. Can I get second by Commissioner Helfrey? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain?
I'd abstain.
I
Motion passes, one abstention. Does the Department of Planning have any opening comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, before I do my short comment, I believe Mr. Bourne also abstained. So if we could verify that before the end of the meeting tonight.
That's correct.
My comment is very short. I'd like to welcome Mr. Marshall to the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is his first meeting as a city council liaison to it. So welcome aboard. If you're not familiar, Mr. Marshall sat on the commission for many years as mayor, so he's not a stranger to our discussions. So thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll enter into the public comment session. If you're here to talk about the public hearing, now is not your time yet, but if you want to comment on any other agenda item, this will be your time. And as a reminder, 3 minutes, unless you're representing a group, and then it'll be 5. Mr. Newberry, do we have any cards?
We do, and Mr. Chair, if you don't mind me adding, if you would like to speak, there's speaker cards on the back table. Fill it out and give it to me here at this table. Thank you. Mr. Chair, the first speaker card is Mr. Trost.
Come on up.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Trost is a representative of the Neighborhood Association, so he'll receive 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Bob Trost. I'm a trustee of the Pinhook Hollow subdivision, and I've been a resident of Pinhook Hollow for 20 years. So I wanted to comment briefly since I guess we canceled the last meeting and the one prior to that was more substantive, but we've been working since then and I just want to bring you up to date what we've been doing during this time. I guess the positive news, we're open to the CUP thing. I think we've warmed up substantially to it, and naturally there's always a glitch with that. We have to, our attorneys are working together, Mr. Katie and Elia Ellis, and so they're fully engaged at this point, we feel, and they're talking, so that's good. We have issues regarding our indentures, as we mentioned, or I mentioned last time. We need 100%. We got one of those antiquated indentures, or excuse me, indentures that indicates we have to have 100% approval before we can change anything, really. And so our attorneys and Mr. Katie are grappling with that. And so we're in discussions to get one landowner out of the 10 join ranks with us. Right now, he won't turn a phone call or pay a dues or anything. So we need to work on him. We have reason to be optimistic, I hope, or I think we are. So we had the last thing we got was, I guess, from Joe, the 33-page, Travis here, we got a 33-page document. I guess you've seen that, outlining your position, your recommendation. And frankly, our attorney was kind of overwhelmed with it. And he says, see if we can buy some time here. I said, I don't think we're voting tonight, but I'll bring that forward to the commission and let them know that we still are reviewing that 33-page document. And I was taken aback by how, detailed it is and what's required there. So anyway, and the last thing is then we're still reviewing some settlement documents we might take to two of the residents to get them on board. So I don't know if that report sounds optimistic. We feel better about it now than we did last time. So anyway, any questions I'd have to try to answer? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Keaty.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Keaty is the attorney for the petitioners, so he'll receive 5 minutes too.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vinich.
Good evening. Vince Katie on behalf of the petitioner, Broken Rocks. I'm not going to take anywhere near the allotted time. We did go through the report. Our architect has reviewed it. Our engineers in the process of reviewing it. There were just a couple comments that stuck out to us that we'd like to work with staff on. From a facilities and project management type standpoint, two things stuck out to me. One is there's a requirement in there about the occupant of the resident not having be affiliated with the actual school that we're talking about putting on here if approved. And the design that we had obviously not communicated very well was the actual manager of the studio itself would be the person that we had intended on living on site with his family. We weren't, to be crystal clear, none of the people that were going to come in and use the studio the couple times a year when this occurs were going to live there or stay there. They would be housed at a hotel and then picked up the van and brought to the site, so we wouldn't have people staying there and that kind of scenario. But it was our intention to have the person that we're calling the manager of the studio be the person that lives on site in the house with his family. So we just wanted to clear that up, and then we can work with staff as to whether or not that's going to be an issue with the conditions for the CUP if it in fact goes forward and is approved. And then the last one was the very last comment in the report itself had to do with your typical development requirement for a public space requirement. And our concern with that is the way we read it, we understand the intention of the ordinance itself. And the way we read the report was maybe because staff was suggesting as a condition for the conditional use permit, if approved, would be some additional parking be added on the site itself. I guess our response to that is one, there's a limitation on how many people can actually show up at any particular time for any one of these events or these recordings that we're going to be doing. And we think the site as paved and the length of the driveway itself is more than enough parking, and therefore there might not be a need to add additional parking, which may trigger the requirement for the public space requirement in the ordinances. So that would be our request there, is to also be able to work with staff and maybe massage that particular request as well. Because again, the way we envision these working is this would be no different than in any of your neighborhoods. If you were having Thanksgiving dinner at your house or a party at your house, we have more than enough parking to accommodate the visitors that will be there. And bear in mind that the students that are going to be coming there, the young musicians to use the facility itself, will be staying at a nearby hotel, and they will be coming to the residence in the studio via van. So there's not going to be any real additional need for parking as far as they're concerned. We acknowledge that we're going to have, different participants, whether it be professors from local schools or the actual musicians themselves that will need parking. But again, we think we can accommodate that. Also here with me this evening is our architect, Thad Martin, who plans to come up and talk about a couple issues that he had with the architectural and some of the design elements. And then finally, also, we have the executive director of Broken Rocks, Mike Zito, that's here in case if you have any questions for him as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Mr. Martin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Thad Martin with V3 Studios on speaking here on behalf of Broken Rocks. And one of the things that I wanted to just point out relative to the staff report that we received late last week was relative to an attachment B, the conditions under floor area height and building requirements. Clause C under there states that the new building that will house the private school activities shall not exceed 5,000 square feet in area, nor exceed 18 feet in height above grade plane. And I just wanted to question, that's counter to the current Planning and Zoning of Wildwood, section of Wildwood Zoning Code 415.090, point D, point 2, point A, sub point 1, indicates that for all lots over 5 acres in non-urban zoning, the accessory structures shall max at 2.5% the overall lot size. So 2.5% of the Broken Rocks lot size factors out. So our lot is 6.473 acres. It's about 281,963.9 square feet. 2.5% of that is 7,049 square feet. So technically, according to your own zoning code, we're allowed up to 7,049 square feet of accessory structures on the site. And then additionally, relative to your point saying that the building shall not exceed 18 feet in height above the final grade plane, section 415.090, point D, point 2, point F, where it gives the heights for non-urban zoning, states that 60 feet max is the height. And our proposal, we are both less than the 7049 and less than the 60 feet. However, what was submitted even in the packet that accompanied the comment is slightly larger than 5,000 square feet and is higher than 18 feet. Currently, our design is 26 feet. Where's that note? 26 feet and 9 7/8 inches is how tall our current building is. And currently, our total square footage is 5,497 square feet. So just wanted to clarify that relative to the condition in the zoning, and curious as to why it was counter to the zoning code itself in those particular sections that I referenced. But that's my only comment.
All right, thank you for your comment.
Mr. Chair, the department does not have any additional speaker cards for the public comment session, but anyone on Zoom, if they want to speak, and they can raise the hand tool. Mr. Chair, the department just received another speaker card, Mr. Zito.
Okay.
Filled out a card for Mr. Zito in case there were any questions. We don't anticipate him speaking. And I forgot to echo one last point, and that was a point that Mr. Trost made. We are working vigorously with the trustees and the subdivision attorney. They have a draft of a proposed agreement that hopefully ties us all together. And it includes a lot of the requirements that are in the report about the number of people that are going to be there and the type of use and getting permission from the trustees to do different things. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. No one is raising their hand on Zoom. So at this point, we'll go do our first public hearing. In the city of Wildwood, public hearings are truly intended to accept comments and questions concerning this posted item. Since this request is being presented at a public hearing, no action is planned on this item tonight, and consideration of it is to be taken no earlier than the July 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This approach ensures all members of the commission will hear all opinions before taking any action. The city's Department of Planning will address the comments, questions, and concerns that are raised tonight and include them as part of its formal recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Anyone in attendance at City Hall tonight wanting to speak should fill out a speaker's card and leave it with Mr. Newberry. Those in attendance via the Zoom webinar platform should use the raise hand feature to indicate you wish to speak at this hearing. A team member will add you to the list of speakers, which will then be communicated to me as chair, and I will invite you to speak when it is your turn. The public hearing process is outlined in the public hearing guidelines pamphlet, which can be found on the table at the entry area to the council chambers. The commission will allow all parties adequate time to present their position. As outlined in the public hearing guidelines pamphlet, speakers who are designated as a group speaker representing more than 5 individuals will be allocated 5 minutes to speak. Those individuals representing themselves will be allocated 3 minutes to speak. In addition, information on this item can be found on the city's website at www.cityofwildwood.com. The commission would like to thank you for your cooperation and participation at tonight's hearing. PZ 6-25, Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies to Lee. PC 6-25, Lou Latorno, 815 Strucker Road, Baldwin, Missouri, 63005. Care of Gabe Dubois, THD Design, 148 Chesterfield Industrial Boulevard, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63005. A request for a change in zoning for attractive land that is 6 acres in size, being located on the east side of Strecker Road, north of its intersection with Highland Summit Drive. Street address 815 Strecker Road, St. Louis County locator number 21U 430031, which is currently zoned NU non-urban resident district, master plan conceptual land use category of suburban residential area, to the R1 1 acre resident district. Proposed use, a total of 2 single-family detached dwellings, including required right-of-way dedication along Strecker Road. One of these dwellings is already constructed. This particular property is located in Ward 3. Thank you.
Mr. Vunich. Mr. Dubek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as usual, the department has prepared a brief slideshow presentation with some exhibits and photographs regarding the subject site. The first is an aerial view identifying the general location of the 6 acre property along Strecker Road, north of its intersection with Highland Summit Drive. Next is just a little bit of a closer view here. As you can see, is the last statement and what Mr. Vunich read of the record. The house is in this area under construction. It's now has been constructed completely. And then the other part of this area that I would point your attention to is the western portion of the site that is has a private property between the Highland Summit Drive and the property itself. I'll have more to say later on that. This is the plan sheet that shows the lot being split into 2 lots, one at 3 acres and one at 2.86 acres with the current home. The kind of orange brown color on the western side is a 40-foot wide access easement that would provide access to the new 3 acre lot if approved. Next are just a series of photographs showing the property's frontage onto Strecker Road. This is standing at the driveway area of the home, looking to the south along Strecker Road. This is standing at that same location looking to the north. And this view just gives a view of the topography as it changes from Strecker Road going kind of up the hill where the house has been constructed. And the next is just an image of the site from Strecker Road. Most of it is vegetated, but this is a break in the vegetation. And then the next set of photographs are just because the second lot is being proposed to be accessed by Highland Summit Drive. We wanted to show you just the intersection of Highland Summit Drive and Strecker Road. This is looking to the south at that intersection. And then this is looking to the north. The left side of the photograph is the frontage of the subject lot onto Strecker Road. The next set of photographs are the general location of where the proposed 40-foot access easement is on Highland Summit Drive. This is looking to the north. This is at the same location looking to the south. And then the next is just kind of the characteristic of the neighborhood across the street from the proposed access. And then this is standing on the other side of the road looking towards the east at the general area of the proposed access easement. You can see that it's heavily vegetated at that location. That concludes the department's presentation. If commission members have any questions, where the department's available for those. But Mr. Chair, the petitioner's representative has provided a presentation for them to present here tonight as well.
Okay, thank you. If the petitioner's representative would like to come up. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Right. Am I reading this? You said that the proposed thing is east of Strecker Road? Okay, I thought you said it was east.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And then looks like we're ready to go now. Just a few nuts and bolts. If you need me to fill out a comment card, I can do so.
Name and address, please.
Yes, that's up next.
Yeah.
I am Elizabeth Lum with Amundsen Davis. We are counsel for the builder who will be constructing the homes at the subject property. We're assisting with the rezoning and subdivision of that property. We're at 7711 Carondelet Avenue, Suite 800, St. Louis, Missouri, 63105. And I want to thank Mr. Vunich and his staff. He's been tremendously helpful over the past couple weeks getting everything together. So the property, as Mr. Newberry indicated, is on Strecker Road. Again, this first slide is just kind of a recap of the property and where it is. The property abuts on the east side of Strecker Road, just north of the entrance to Highland Summit. The property itself is zoned NU non-urban, but it is surrounded by R1A, 1 acre residential properties or other residential developments. So you can see at the north, there's Wycliffe, and then there's a large common area actually belonging to Wycliffe between the actual homes and the property. To the east, you have Strecker Road and Wildwood Meadows. To the south and to the west are Highland Summit. The excerpt from your zoning map, again, just kind of shows the property itself is like this small non-urban island in the middle of the R1 1 acre residential district. So there really won't be any conflict with any of the surrounding uses by doing this rezoning. It would simply make it conform with the surrounding properties. All right, so the request to rezone. The property itself is nearly 6 acres. You cannot, of course, build 2 houses on 1 lot, so we need to divide it. Along with the subdivision, there was a request for a bit of the front, the proposed lot 2, which would be on the east fronting on Strecker Road, to have some right of way in the event the city wants to put a sidewalk or something in there. That reduced the size of lot 2 from 3 acres to 2.86. So we're talking about maybe 1/10 of an acre here. But this will, because the lots are over 1 acre, it will be fine within the 1 acre zone, starting with, within the R1 1 acre residential district. Starting with lot 2 on the proposed lot split. Lot 2 has the existing home on it. The proposed lot 2 without the right of way would have 3 acres on it. With the right of way that's outlined there in red, it's about 2.86. But for the right of way, it would be 3 acres or very, very close to it. The proposed lot 1 is to the west, so it's kind of behind where the proposed lot 2 is, where the existing residence is. Would be accessed via a private easement between the property and Highland Summit Drive. Highland Summit Drive is has been accepted for public maintenance by the city of Wildwood. What we're talking about here too, as far as traffic, is a residence. So it would be, 1, 2, 3 cars, however many, people would be living there and driving. We're not talking about a huge burden or anything on the city streets. We're talking about 1 house. I did notice in looking through the packet today that there were some concerns raised by the citizens in Wildwood, which we are addressing here with our impact of the lot split. One of the concerns I kind of summarized as excess development. I saw some concerns regarding traffic, drainage and runoff, things like that. This is, again, going to be a custom home built on a largely wooded lot. The builder will comply with city ordinances with regard to grading, impervious surface, runoff, etc. Again, this is just one additional residence. It's not a new subdivision. It's a house. Again, concerns with traffic. Somebody did point out the curve on Strucker Road approaching Highland Summit Drive. This house won't have access to Highland Summit Drive. So there will be, or excuse me, it won't have access to Strucker Road. I apologize. So there won't be any change to the traffic on Strucker Road. I believe there was some concern about some erosion and water rising on Calks Creek. That is actually across Strucker Road to the east of our property. We don't abut it. The new home will not be visible from Strucker Road, or if it is, you know, this will be a well-appointed custom-built home. But we don't believe it will be visible. The last concern was regarding construction, parking, and dirt up and down the road. Because this lot has already got one home on it, there's been some grading done. There's room now, I believe, for up to 15 construction vehicles. The builder has committed to putting a clean out station kind of on the property so that the construction vehicles coming in and out can kind of wash off their wheels and kind of help keep Strucker Road tidy. And finally, just to wrap up, we have the factors to be considered when doing the rezoning. One, of course, is the use of surrounding property. Again, this would simply make this current, you know, property match the surrounding properties. There's no right-of-way dedication requested. I believe the adaptability of the property would be, you know, it could be used for the current zoning, but of course you can't put an extra home on there the way it is. As far as the value of surrounding properties, we have heard that this could potentially increase the value of the properties, as this will be a well-appointed custom home. I believe, is it 1.5? Okay, so valued at approximately 1.6 million. So this is not going to be, you know, something that's thrown up overnight. It complies with the master plan, which shows the area being used as residential. The city complied with the applicable requirements for publishment. The builder will comply with applicable ordinances for grading, water quality, tree preservation, things like that. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I also have the builder here if you have any questions of him.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
One question I did have, it looks like you're getting an easement from a lot owner on Highland Summit.
Correct.
Do you have that easement already?
We have prepared the agreement. We have a verbal commitment from the property owner. Oh, we have a contract. Okay. Oh, no, that's fine. We have a contract from the property owner, and then once everything is closed, we'll have an easement as well. We've got it prepared. I think it's drafted in your materials.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Helfrey.
So I have some questions from Mr. Vunich. Thank you very much for speaking with us. So I have a couple things. I drive past this every day. And so one of my first questions is the elevation. I went back through and I looked through the whole presentation. I didn't see anything that said elevations, because I know that when you're standing on Strucker Road and you look up, it looks like the property just continues to go up into the sky. So my first question is, this second lot that they're talking about, is that higher than the existing first lot who has its entire backyard is retaining wall? So is that a whole lot higher?
Yes, ma'am. The elevation is significantly different,
Okay.
and it's higher than the existing residence and higher in elevation than Strecker Road.
Okay. So I will let you know, I drive this road multiple times a day, and runoff is absolutely an issue in that area. It doesn't matter if they're next to Calks Creek or not. So one of the questions I have is, how do you address that? Because I didn't see a picture on the other side of Strecker Road where the houses are way down. So you've got this driveway that's up here that comes down, and all of the runoff with, it's a lot of concrete on that driveway, and it hits Strecker Road. There's no kind of drainage ditch that you can see, that I can see. And then you've got Strecker, and it runs straight off into these people's homes, which every single one of these things was about, we're washing away, which we know we have those issues. So my question would be, I know that in the presentation, they said they would address the runoff according to city regulations, but how exactly do we protect those people that are on the other side of Strecker Road, that are below road grade, from more concrete, more runoff? And when you start clearing trees on that lot, you're going to have a lot more runoff and mud. How do we protect those people? That's my second question. The next thing is, you said you could park 15 construction vehicles on that and you might put your clean out up there. But once again, it goes back to, it's up here and water runs downhill. And so what's going to happen with all that mud and that dirt and that clean out? Is it going to rush down? And I think that's it. The only other comment I would make is that I know you keep saying it's only one additional residence, and I'm not opposed to it. These are just questions I want answered. But I have 5 cars at my one residence. So, you know, it's a lot of cars sometimes. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Helfrey, with regards to stormwater management, this particular property is also within the jurisdiction of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. Now, saying that, it is one new home on a 3-acre lot. So typically, the extent of runoff isn't comparable to, let's say, a smaller subdivision with multiple lots, and the need for extensive improvements from a stormwater management perspective. However, as you know, our watershed erosion task force has spent the last 3+ years trying to figure out the problems in Cox Creek watershed, particularly in this area. And we now do require on-site treatment of runoff for even 3-acre lots. And so there'll be some combination of improvements for stormwater management. We do rock sumps where the water from the downspouts drains to a rock sump, and it basically stays on site because it migrates through the soil to the geology below. We also have used amended soils. So there's a whole list of potential options, but primarily we'll let MSD first tell us what they think, and then we'll add to that. We also, as part of the development process, we do require a stormwater pollution prevention plan, and that does include temporary off-street parking for construction employees. It has to be rocked. There has to be a washout area. And obviously, we have to have a schedule if mud does get out onto the public street. Also, we require siltation control at the edge of the disturbance limits, and that has to be checked after major storms and on a regular basis as well. And there'll be a pre-construction meeting with our code inspector to ensure it's all been addressed. The runoff or any erosion that might occur will basically go to the existing residents first. So I'm sure that neighbor will be wanting to ensure that there isn't an issue. So between the new development site at Strecker Road and Wildwood Meadows, we have an existing home that's on now, it will be on a 2.86 acre tract of land if the zoning's approved or recommended for approval and then approved by City Council. So there's, I think, enough checks and balances that one additional home on a 3-acre lot, I won't guarantee there won't be ever an issue, but we can address many of them.
Yeah, I believe during the development phase, our client engineer will be worthy to produce the appropriate plans that are agreeable to everybody.
I don't live in the neighborhood that's at the bottom of that hill, but I just would hope that you just kind of address their concerns.
Sure.
I mean, you're not required. That's just my hope, right? So thank you for your time.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Clayton? Yeah, just one question. Will this home face Highland Summit or face Strecker Road?
It'll fit.
Thank you.
Councilmember Marshall?
Just a question down on Strecker Road. I see you have the part vacated there. Will there not be an escrow put in for a sidewalk in the future?
Well, obviously, the requested dedication is the reason the property owner needs the rezoning to be considered. And yes, as part of a lot split or rezoning, we can request the installation of a sidewalk. And it will be our intent to have a sidewalk installed.
Mayor Garitano?
Director Vunich, just wondering, I know that this home is behind the one that was more recently built. It looks like that home is about 6,276 square feet. Yeah, 6,276 square feet. Do we have any known issues when that home was under construction regarding some of the concerns that came up? Because if those concerns would have definitely come up with a home even closer to Stracker right there.
Mayor Garitano, I did read the comments that were submitted by some of the surrounding property owners, and certainly if the utility connections that were made for the existing residents weren't completed in terms of final grade, establishment of ground cover, et cetera, we can address that. And I'm sure the property owner will be glad to be a good neighbor. And so I'll ask our code enforcement team to take a ride out there and do an inspection. We can address that long before the rezonings.
I guess my question was, when that one was being built, did we run into any issues?
I don't recall any other than, obviously, as you saw from the photographs provided by Mr. Newberry, that driveway that kind of climbs that steep hill to get to the flat building pad where the new residence is located, that was rock for a while. And when we had some of our bigger storms, I know that there was rock that traversed out onto Strecker Road, but I believe it was addressed in a reasonable time frame.
And then I do see in one of the views of that site there, looks like there is a stormwater collection basin there. Could you describe that a little bit more?
Sure. That is the stormwater management facility for Wycliffe. And so Wycliffe, through its system of streets, curbs, gutters, curb inlets, area inlets, drain all their stormwater there. And then it's managed from a standpoint of held there and released at a metered amount. So that belongs to the subdivision to the north.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
we have.
Oh, sorry. Yes, speaker cards. My bad.
Mr. Chair, the first speaker is Mr. Sauer.
Hello, everybody. My name is Marty Sauer. I live at 701 Oaksdale Summit Court, which is in Highland Summit, Ward 3. Ever since we've got our little flyers in the mail, there's been a lot of rumors floating around the subdivision. So what I have here is a list of questions after talking with several of the homeowners in our subdivision. I've compiled a list of what we want to talk about. So we can do it a couple different ways if you want. I mean, I can stop and you can answer the questions if it's possible, or else I can just leave them and then you guys can answer it later on.
Go ahead and just
See how it
speak all of
goes?
your concerns.
See how
and
it
we
goes?
can
Okay.
React at the end.
Okay. Now that we know that the access point is not off Strecker Road, but off Highland Summit Road, is there going to be public record on how much that purchase price was for that homeowner for our subdivision to see or not?
Just keep going and we'll answer
Okay.
at the end.
All right. Was Highland Summit Drive the only access point that was looked at? Because you could have an access point going right up from Strecker Road to that back lot back there. And that would only inconvenience one homeowner, where if you come on Highland Summit Drive, it's going to be inconvenience for 84 homeowners going into that house. Okay. Let's see. Obviously, Wildwood hasn't approved this, so I can skip that one. Does Highland Summit have an HOA voting on this whole project? Because from what we've heard, the homeowner wants to join our subdivision, and we just want to make sure everything is going to be followed per our guidelines. And we've heard that a possible donation to the HOA, we'd like to know how much that's going to be. And who has the final say on this whole project? Wildwood, the HOA, if they vote it down, or what? Okay. Is there an estimated completion date on this project? I know barring weather and everything else, just like to know what a completion is. Who's responsible for, I heard a lot of things about Strecker Road and everything else. Who's responsible for road damage on Highland Summit Drive? And where will all these construction vehicles be parked? Because concrete trucks are going to have to come up Highland Summit Drive to get access if you're going to go through there. And one of the questions we have. And I think I heard the lady say that property values will go up because this is estimated it says $1.6 million home compared to other ones in there that aren't near that. And then will our taxes go up also? Another question that people have. And that's it. I'd like to know if you want me to leave the questions here? Okay, that's all I have.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Mayor Garitano, yes.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. Thank you for raising those points. I think the department can try to answer some questions, but I believe some of those questions are a matter between the petitioner and the HOA. But I'll defer to the Department of Planning. I just want to make sure that the speaker doesn't get the impression that this is the city's project or anything like that. This is petitioners bring their projects to the city and then we review them. Director Vunich, did you wish to address maybe some of those items or?
I can do a general review, but with Mr. Sauer leaving the questions, we'll do a more formal response so that they can circulate it around the neighborhood. First and foremost, the department has encouraged the petitioner to engage with the homeowners association, particularly the trustees. Obviously, it's imperative that the trustees know what is being proposed, and if they do have any comments, certainly the departments of planning and public works would like to hear those, and we'll address them as best as possible. So in terms of the HOA, we've encouraged that communication, that input, and that and whatever process they have. Secondly, we do not know of any donation to the homeowners association relative to an allowance. The proposed easement is across private property, not common ground. And so it is a negotiation between that private property owner and the petitioner in this case. Who has final say? We, as the city, will make the determination relative to the zoning district designation of the property. But if there are indentures that have something contrary, our decision does not negate the indentures. And so it is in the best interest, again, for the petitioner and the homeowners association to have that communication. Completion date is a good question for the petitioner. Any work in the public right-of-way requires a special use permit from our Department of Public Works. And that special use permit does require an escrow to ensure that if there is damage, it's repaired. We expect the petitioner or the developer or builder to make those repairs, but if not, that escrow is our guarantee. We do require all construction vehicles and employee vehicles to be off-street, not on-street for parking purposes. That's why we've talked about a rocked-in lot, the washout area, etc. They work fairly well, but you cannot guarantee that mud will not go onto the street. And if it does, we expect the developer builder to address it. Will taxes increase? I think that's almost a given. Taxes increase all the time, but I don't have an answer to that specific question. That's something between the Department of Revenue, the assessor, and how it will impact an overall subdivision of almost 100 homes. So I'll do the best I can. I will say that to access this particular lot from lot 2 to Strecker Road, we would require a public dedication for all intents and purposes, or at least a private dedication that meets our rural roadway standards. So there would be a substantial amount of grading and tree removal to make that particular connection. And in the department's opinion, we probably would prefer not to see that, because along with that amount of grading and tree removal, there would be more stormwater that potentially would be generated because of the loss of the woodlands. So we actually like the access point on the Highland Summit Drive, and we think as a city, we prefer it for the simple fact that it causes less site disturbance on both lots. We'll provide formal responses to all the questions as best we can. The ones we can't, we'll ask Ms. Lum, the attorney representing the builder, to see if she can assist. Thank you.
Travis, do you have any more speaker cards?
One additional speaker card.
Go ahead.
The next speaker is Mr. Reed.
I'm Scott Reed, and I live at 16748 Highland Summit Drive here in Wildwood. My question is really procedural in nature, and it really comes down to this question. How can you accept testimony on a project that has been improperly noticed? Now, the reason I say that is, and Jim, you really nailed it. And so you're to be complimented. But the document that caught my eye is this one. And as a matter of fact, you displayed this. And if you would, could you pull it up for just a moment? Is that possible? If not, I'll address it verbally. But the picture, I think, is adequate from what I've seen here tonight. But the description on the back says the project is being located on the east side of Strecker Road, north of the intersection with Highland Summit. This is not east of Strecker Road, it's west. The same mistake appears in tonight's agenda. It's in tonight's agenda, it says being located on the east side of Strecker Road, north of the intersection of Highland Summit. So my question is very simple, it's procedural. How do you go ahead and accept testimony from a project that was improperly noticed?
Thank you for your comment.
Well, Mr. Chair, we do have our city attorney in attendance tonight, but my response will be the general directions is one way that we notice the site. We provide the photograph, the aerial photograph with the area highlighted. We provide the locator number that comes from St. Louis County, and we provide the street address. So as I say, it's just one of many ways we identify the property. But Mr. Young, if the department's made a mistake, we'll certainly accept responsibility and take your direction on how to correct it. Thank you.
Mr. Young, do you have any comments?
I have, at this point, I didn't see any issues with the director's explanation of the notice.
All right, thank you.
Well, again, Mr. Chair, we'll spend a little more time with the city attorney and provide him the information the speaker noted, and we'll make sure that we're doing the right thing. Thank you.
And this is not the last time this notice will be in front of us. So if we can correct the typo in future publications, that would be appreciated. All right, Commissioner Helfrey.
Well, I just had one question and one comment. My question was, do they currently belong to that HOA? Or the lot, does it currently belong to that HOA?
No, this is just an orphan parcel of ground that was when Wycliffe was proposed, I believe Maselli Homes tried to purchase it. The owner of the property didn't want to sell it to Maselli Homes. And so it's kind of just been an orphan piece for a period of time. And now the current resident of the existing dwelling bought it, the 6 acres, built their residence, and now is wanting to subdivide it and allow an additional residence. But no, it's not part of Highland Summit. It's not part of Wycliffe, not part of Wildwood Meadows.
And it's not required to be, correct?
No,
Okay.
if the builder developer wants to become part of the homeowners association of Highland Summit, that's an issue between the property owner and the HOA.
Okay. And then I just wanted to make one comment on something you said earlier. As I said multiple times, I drive that road every day. And when they were building this first house and there was some bad weather in the rocks, they were out there immediately cleaning it up. That was never an issue. So I just want to make sure they always were out there and addressed any issues with the rocks on the road immediately. So thank you.
Thank you.
No more speaker cards, correct?
No additional speaker cards. If we could just allow a moment for the folks on Zoom who would like to speak, great. Please use the raise hand tool.
All right. Seeing nothing, can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Oh, Mayor.
Actually, let me ask a question, and this might be more for the city attorney. Just based on that comment there, do we have the option if we wish to reopen the public hearing? Is that an option available to us?
Generally speaking, once the hearing is closed, the only way to reopen it is to republish. So if you're going to close the meeting, close the hearing, which I should say I'm comfortable with, I would not recommend reopening it without republishing.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Mr. Young, could we hold the public hearing open and then recite the corrected direction at the time when we present the information report with recommendation?
That's certainly within the discretion of the commission, yes.
Yeah, maybe that's what I would ask is let's keep that open, just to make sure there is an opportunity. Obviously, there are speakers that did come here tonight related to that, but just in case anyone does wish to speak based on that comment regarding the east-west direction there being noted. Anyway, we were not planning on making any decision tonight. It was only a public hearing for tonight. So I would suggest that.
Yeah. So leave the public hearing open and then we'll close it, and barring something substantial next month, we'll act on your information report at that time.
Yes, and my recollection, and correct me, Mr. Newberry, if I'm wrong, we'll actually send out a mailer for the information report to the same number of properties that received the notice regarding the public hearing. And so the new mailer will have the corrected direction. And my apologies.
So
Certainly.
you'll send out a new mail.
Yes, for
With
the
the
public
corrected
meeting
information.
on the information
Yeah, I
report.
think that makes sense, just so that there's clarity. Give folks an opportunity if anybody wishes to speak.
So at this point, looking for a motion to postpone. Yes. Oh, no.
I was just going to make a motion to leave it open until the information report comes back. So you wouldn't be closing it.
All right.
Yeah, just leave it open.
That's what I was getting at. I worded it. So we have a motion and a second. Sure.
Sowers' concerns. And so I'll try to take them in order as much as I can. He asked whether there would be a public record of the easement and the consideration paid. The answer is that yes, the easement agreement will be recorded. So that will be a public record. The consideration is a private contract between the parties, so that won't necessarily be made public. As far as access to Strecker Road, I believe Mr. Vonich addressed that. is that it would take a considerable amount of grading and a lot more impervious surface, which would of course hinder some of the concerns of runoff. But given the terrain of the property, it's also just not feasible. So access to Highland Summit Drive is more feasible for the parties. As far as a voting, to my knowledge, the property owners do not intend to become part of the homeowners association. So we do not believe any voting among the members of the homeowners would be required because this is not over common ground, it's over a private lot. Should that change, I'll let you know. But to my knowledge, right now, there is no intent to join the homeowners association. I was informed that there was a potential for a donation to the homeowners association that is currently being negotiated. So I can't really give an amount. Once there is, if there is something agreed upon, then, you know, it can be made known to the homeowners. And finally, I believe Mr. Vunich addressed this too. Construction vehicles will be parked on the property. Whether property value will go up, of course, it's speculative. We believe it will. But, you know, again, that is speculative, as would be any potential increase in taxes. And I believe that is it. So
All right,
thank you
for your response.
Thank you.
All right. Now, so we have a motion and the second to hold this open.
Mr.
until-
Chair, I didn't catch the second. I apologize.
Oh, Commissioner Rubis.
Thank you.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, Mr. Newberry, PZ 4-25.
PZ 4-25, Broken Rock Studio, 18360 Pinhook Hollow Drive, Wildwood, Missouri 63069, care of Vince Katie, 7700 Forsyth Boulevard, Clayton, Missouri 63105. A request for a conditional use permit to be granted upon an approximately 6.5 acre tract of land that is located at the terminus of Pinhook Hollow Drive, private, west of its intersection with Allenton Road, public. Property address 18360 Pinhook Hollow Drive, St. Louis County, locator number 28X520046 in non-urban residence district. Proposed use, a specialized private school and or retreat operated by a not-for-profit entity, which would include a multimedia production facility, i.e. music recording studio, Ward 6.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, I do want to acknowledge Mr. Trost's statement relative to their negotiations being ongoing and certainly not complete. That typically would trigger a postponement discussion relative to the report and recommendation. But I would note that I believe in this particular case, if the conditional use permit is not supported by the Planning and Zoning Commission, there probably does not need to be any further negotiation between the property owner, petitioner, and the homeowners association. So tonight I would like to proceed at least to gauge the commission's support of the department's recommendation in this regard and acknowledge, as it was stated, I believe, by the mayor, there will be another opportunity in approximately 1 month to hear an update on the negotiations with the homeowners association and certainly for the Planning and Zoning Commission to alter or modify their recommendation and the components associated with it if it is favorable tonight. So again, I am asking the commission for direction. Would you prefer postponement or would you like to hear the department's recommendation relative to this matter?
Commissioner Helfrey.
I would ask you to go on. Do you need a motion for that? To just continue on?
No, I don't believe I do. I just wanted to make sure that you understood we weren't ignoring Mr. Trost. He's been very cooperative and we've had conversations relative to this. So I don't want to ignore him, but I also believe if there's not an inclination on the commission's part to support the permit, negotiations really don't need to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is that our approval is separate from their approval and either one of them can torpedo the whole thing. So we could give our approval and they fall apart, or we can say no and like you said, they don't bother.
Well, with no objection, I'll proceed forward.
Mayor Garitano?
Yeah, just more of a question. I mean, does the department have a preference whether we, which way we
I
take?
would like to present the recommendation with the report and again, hear what the Planning and Zoning Commission is thinking in this regard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Con.
Quick
Commissioner
question,
Con.
as a non-for-profit, will they be paying real estate taxes?
It is my understanding that unless you're a church or governmental entity, you pay property taxes. But I would defer and I'll have to investigate that. That's usually not an item the department concerns itself with on a land use matter. Because obviously we have a lot of institutional uses in Wildwood that would be great if they paid taxes to the city. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has provided to you for consideration tonight a report with recommendation relative to the request that Mr. Newberry just read into tonight's record. The request is for consideration of a conditional use permit on this approximately 7-acre tract of land to accommodate the department would describe as an incubator facility to help musicians and music artists apply their trade in a context of understanding the ins and outs of the industry. Certainly, as was described at public hearing by the musician and the partner, is that this is something that they believe is essential given the current conditions relative to the music industry, how things transpire there. The department obviously recognizes this as a unique request because for all intents and purposes, the petitioner is asking the city to consider a non-residential use at the end of a private street in a large lot single-family subdivision. However, as is described in the report, as unique as it is, the steps that are being taken by the petitioner and the communication between the homeowners association and the homeowners themselves has been certainly very different than what we typically see or hear. So tonight, the department is recommending that the Planning and Zoning Commission consider the conditional use permit request favorably. And the reason it believes that there is grounds for the commission to consider a favorable recommendation and action is first and foremost the appropriateness of the use. The intent is to manage the new building in a way that is consistent with the built environment both on the site and in the vicinity. The amount of traffic will be minimized to what the department would describe as consistent with any typical single-family dwelling that might be there. A single van bringing the students to the location, and then a few cars associated with professional musicians or others that are involved in the process. As noted, although the couple that I believe are the caretakers now may not be the residents of the dwelling, it is the intent to have the dwelling for residential purposes, not affiliated with any of the activities inside the studio itself. So again, the dwelling, existing dwelling stays a dwelling, and there is a family that resides there. And the studio, based upon the parameters that were described by the petitioner and the conditions in attachment B, is very limited in terms of the amount of traffic generated, the noise associated with it, and the activity that's visible to the outside. The department believes that the restrictions on the number of students, the number of sessions over any given year will ensure a low impact use relative to this particular property and the area around it. In terms of impacts, the greatest impact is on the existing private street, Pinhook Hollow Drive. And in the report, the department does spend a great deal of time describing the conversations with the homeowners association, as well as what it believes are essential components if the private street is to be used for this non-residential purpose. And first and foremost, that step is to pave the street so as it is an asphalt or hard surface in accordance with the rural roadway standards, with some exceptions. The department believes that a good street is a benefit to the homeowners association, and the applicant. However, Mr. Trost has mentioned on a couple of occasions that there is not consensus yet on that street. So the condition in attachment B does defer to a large degree to direction from the homeowners association about how they would like that street to be. They're paved, a better dust-free surface, or as is. And certainly, I think that's a fair approach. We do want to retain the rural nature, so we are not requiring a 20-foot width, but would be maintained at its current width, which I believe is approximately 12 feet, with bump outs for emergency purposes. The number of vehicles to the not-for-profit relative to the students would not exceed one, so the impacts again are very limited relative to traffic. We've talked about the existing dwelling. We want to ensure that the architecture is consistent with the existing dwelling as well as the surrounding area. And per the request of one of the speakers at the public hearing, we would do a review after the first year to ensure that all of the steps or components of the not-for-profit were consistent, but thereafter it would be on a 10-year cycle. And so from that perspective, we believe that we would guarantee that steps are in place and complete after the first year. And then we believe that the 10-year cycle would be reasonable based upon other low-impact permits of this nature that have been granted in the city of Wildwood. To respond to some of the comments from the petitioner and the petitioner's architect, first and foremost, the information provided that the public hearing didn't have the new building as part of it. That new building layout was provided at the time of the public hearing, and the new building layout didn't have the square footage. So the department did its best to assess that square footage at 5,000 square feet. It received a revised submittal the day it was preparing the report. So that's an error on the director's part that it doesn't say 5,500, but 5,000. And again, we were assessing the height of the structure. And again, we had it at 18 feet. I believe it is 27 feet. So those would be changes the department would recommend. However, the architect made a long statement relative to consistency with the underlying regulations of the NU non-urban resident district. And as the commission is aware, we cannot be less restricted than those underlying requirements of the non-urban resident district, but we can be much more restrictive. And in a setting like this, with a non-residential use and a residential subdivision, we are always going to err of being more cautious, more restrictive to ensure the impacts are limited. So tonight we have prepared a list of conditions relative to this particular request. We believe the conditions on modification for the studio size and its height are reasonable and appropriate, and that the conditional use permit can operate at this location with minimal impact and actually derive benefits to the other homeowners relative to existing infrastructure and an improvement. And finally, the public space requirement is only applied for new spaces. We've calculated 7 spaces are required, and we believe the existing area of gravel and pavement accommodate those 7 spaces. So there would be no public space requirement unless additional parking is added. So again, we have a favorable recommendation for your consideration tonight. After a motion and second, Mr. Newberry, Mr. Young, and I are available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vernich. Commissioner Halpern?
You did good because I wrote down all those questions and I was going to ask you all from, but I have one.
Sure.
This resident occupant, so we're requiring the person that lives in the home to not be affiliated with the school. So I guess I'm just trying to understand why that's a requirement. I don't disagree or agree. I just don't understand it.
For clarity's sake, the department was not wanting the students to reside in the dwelling. And so the affiliation meant more for the students themselves not an individual, let's say, as the manager of the studio or the caretakers of the property.
So I guess when we make the changes for the building, could we also maybe somehow change that so that it's a little more
Certainly.
clear, less muddy?
Certainly. Again, the description wasn't as well written as I had hoped, but it's truly intended to avoid students actually occupying the dwelling, because as was provided in testimony at the public hearing, they will say offsite at a local hotel somewhere in the vicinity.
Hopefully in Wildwood, right?
Well, we'd like the Wildwood Hotel to benefit from this more so than Eureka, but that's not a decision we get to make.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich.
You're
Eureka's
welcome,
a whole
ma'am.
lot closer. That hop.
I'm sorry. All right.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation with the changes for the new building, the height and the square footage, as well as clearing up the verbiage for the resident of the home.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions?
I had just one quick question.
Yeah, Commissioner Depler.
Thank you. I was just curious, the existing house on the property, what is the height of it? Just for curiosity. I couldn't find that in the notes.
It's a story and a half. So those can vary anywhere from around 15 to 18 feet, even up to 20 feet. So the
Okay.
studio will be a taller building than the existing dwelling, is my understanding.
Okay. Yeah, I was assuming it was probably in the 20-foot range, just looking at this picture. So it's not going to be significantly higher than it. Thank you.
Now, it appears that at the most, it may be anywhere from 8 to 10 feet. And again, elevation wise, it seems to sit, the location of the proposed new studio seems to sit at a bit of a lower elevation. Again, it's at the end of the cul-de-sac, and for all intents and purposes, is not visible unless you go to the end of the cul-de-sac itself.
So
Thank you, Ms. Depler.
The new well, keep that up. The new studio is going to be where that building in the very back, that one.
Yes, based upon the new preliminary development plan, both of the outbuildings are to be removed and replaced with a single studio.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thank you. All right. Any other question?
Thank you.
All right. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler votes yes. Commissioner Rubis,
Yes.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Commissioner Boren votes yes. Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Mayor Garitano.
Yes.
Thank
All
you,
right. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. Next on the agenda, PZ 2-25, Mr. Newberry.
PZ 2-25, G2 Property Holdings, care of Martin Ewell, 2691 Joy Ridge Drive, Chesterfield, Missouri 63017. Request for a change in zoning from the amended C8 Planned Commercial District to the second amended C8 Planned Commercial District for a property that is generally located at the terminus of Hawthorne Village Parkway, west side of State Route 109, and also being south of State Route 100. PZ 22-97 St. Ange Properties, Wildwood Auto Mart. Property address 17109 Hawthorne Village Parkway, St. Louis County, locator number 23V130042. Amended C8 Planned Commercial District, Town Center Workplace District, thereby allowing amendments to the current governing ordinance to include new permitted uses and authorize other related accessory activities at the subject location. Proposed use, warehouse facility with parking area and also being inclusive of the outdoor storage of equipment and related materials, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight an information report with recommendation regarding the request that Mr. Newberry just read into tonight's record. The request is to develop a vacant parcel of ground that is part of town center and located immediately west of the Phillips 66 convenience store, gas pumps and car wash that is situated at the southwest corner of the intersection of State Route 109 and State Route 100. I think it's important to note early in the discussion relative to this request that there is an existing Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District pump station located on the same property. Plans in the vicinity of that pump station are required to have a notice of warning that the pump station does create an odor at times and can be less than the most desirable neighbor. I think that's important to note here in the fact that at one point, this particular lot was identified as a potential site for a sit-down restaurant and then a two-story office building. The site has some characteristics that does not lend itself well to those types of uses. First and foremost, the pump station that was identified in my initial comments. Secondly, visibility-wise, it sits at a lower elevation behind the convenience store and is at a lower elevation from State Route 100, all compounding an issue of visibility, which for all intents and purposes explains why the initial rezoning done in the late 1990s and almost 25 years later still remains vacant. The department has reviewed the request and initially did not support it from the standpoint that the petitioner wanted to build a metal building in town center. A metal building as the primary structure on a town center lot has never been authorized by the city of Wildwood. And so from that perspective, the department was not supportive. The petitioner recognized the concern and after 2 postponements, submitted a plan that actually shows a building that will emulate in many ways the materials that are set forth for town center in its architectural guidelines. There will be siding, there will be a metal roof, there will be improvements in the interior to emulate basically a building that belongs in town center at this particular site. The building itself is 5,000 square feet in size. The limitations on outdoor storage are significant, and the intent of the petitioner is to store most of the vehicles, pickup trucks and trailers inside. That does not preclude some limited outdoor storage. However, that outdoor storage does not include any materials such as rock, sand, gravel, etc. The original design showed the area around the building as being gravel. That is changed to asphalt to hard surface, again, a requirement of town center. But all in all, the revised preliminary development plan shows substantial improvement and consistency with the designation of the regulating plan, workplace district, which anticipates offices and warehousing. The architectural guidelines are now addressed to the satisfaction of the department, and the design standards reflect the uniqueness of this site, which is it's oddly shaped. It has a pump station on it, and the pump station needs an access road that's been defined as surrounding the building. So from all of those characteristics and the steps taken by the petitioner to ensure a minimum level of compliance to the city's town center plan, the department is recommending that the Second Amendment of the C8 Plan Commercial District be favorably considered by the commission. There are a list of conditions associated with that recommendation that are integral to the department's support and believes should be integral to the commission's support. But I do want to note one that may be somewhat difficult from the standpoint of expense. That particular roadway has been in place now for 20 plus years, and the department believes it is incumbent on the petitioner to upgrade it as best as possible to ensure that it is a passable surface, not only for his business, but for access to the pump station. So that's one of the few items the department believes needs to be noted to the commission as well as the petitioner as part of its presentation. Summary, the department is recommending a favorable consideration of the amendment of the planned district on this site. After a motion and second, the department will be available for any comments or questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. With respect to the roadway, are you talking that it would need to be approved all the way up to 109 or just behind the Phillips 60s?
On the subject side.
Oh, okay.
Actually, Hawthorne Village Parkway is a city street. So if it's in bad shape, we can take care of that.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion, Commissioner Helfrey?
I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? Second, by Commissioner Clayton. Any other questions or Councilmember Marshall?
I know I read this. They're going to drill a well. They'll not use city water. What about septic sewage? I mean, they're right there. Will they have water and sewer like you would in town center?
Well, kind of turning back the pages of time, the Phillips 66, when it developed, wanted a car wash. So it was a real struggle because there was not public potable water in the near vicinity. The city approved the car wash, but for an initial period, it was not operational. And what happened after that is a little fuzzy because I don't recall approving something that authorized a private main to be installed under Route 100 to serve the car wash. I know the car wash became operational after a period of time. The private main doesn't allow for a connection. So for this small 5,000 square foot office warehouse, they would have to either come from east to west under Route 109 or wait on the development of the reserve and have to cross Bonham Creek. So for the limited amount of use and the size of the building, a private well in this case, or private main similar to what the convenience store utilizes seemed reasonable. They will have to connect to public sewer.
I was just curious because they'll have a small office area, and then down the road, if they decide they want to change that, you'll be limited with a well and limited use. But I think you're right. Maybe they could tap into something down the road. I just thought that was interesting to be all considered town center, but not have city water.
And as you know, we've struggled in town center south of Manchester Road in the areas of East Center and West Avenue. As developments occurred, the old public water district #1 system of pipes just wasn't providing the volume or velocity. Missouri American Water Company does have a long-range plan to upgrade the system and do a loop, actually, that'll go as far west as, I think, Wild Horse Creek Road in that vicinity along Route 100. But right now, the water situation isn't quite as stable as the department would like. But for use like this, with all of the employees being out most of the day, I feel comfortable that we can accommodate it until changes occur.
North of Manchester Road isn't the greatest either in that area.
Sorry. And they do have a loop plan in place, and they hope to implement that in the next few years. And certainly it'd be a welcome relief to all of you.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Duckler?
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis?
Yes.
Commissioner Boren?
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn?
Yes.
Chair Beatty?
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall?
Yes.
Mayor Garitano?
Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, Mr. Newberry, PZ 1-25.
A report on the site development plan, SDP, and associated architectural drawings for PZ 1-25 Cattails Lodge, care of Jane Budnick, 404 Strecker Road, Wildwood, Missouri 63011, which involves an existing commercial center located at the northeast corner of Strecker Road and Clayton Road, amended C8 Plan Commercial District, Street Address 16497 Clayton Road, St. Louis County Locator Number 21U120327, thereby recommending their favorable recommendation for these submittals in association with a luxury pet boarding facility kennel that is limited to the keeping of cats, Ward 2.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department is presenting to you a report with recommendation regarding an amendment to a site development plan for this particular commercial center. As you know, recently, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended an amendment to the existing zoning to accommodate this boarding facility for cats. City Council concurred and amended the ordinance. That amendment of ordinance contained a number of conditions specifically identified on page 2 of the report. It's important to note that there are limitations on the number of cats that can be boarded at the facility. There are requirements relative to the minimum amount of space for each cat. And importantly, there are no outdoor activities allowed as part of this boarding facility. Additionally, there are a number of requirements relative to just the interior space and ensuring that it's a habitable space for all. And all of those items have been addressed in this submittal. And so tonight, the department is presenting the amended site development plan. There's no changes from the current condition, along with the information that was required by the Planning and Zoning Commission for this specific use and recommending its approval. Is there any questions or comments after a motion and second? The department would be glad to answer that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Any discussion or motion? Commissioner Clayton. Second by Commissioner Cohn. Did you have any other questions? All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis,
Yes.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
and Mayor Garitano. Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, one last thing. Commissioner Helfrey needed to step down as our liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission, and so I am looking for a replacement. Anyone want to join as the liaison to HPC? Don't all speak at once.
I do want to make a comment, though. I think that the description you have is the old meeting dates were on Wednesday. They're now the fourth Thursday. So if somebody's building it around their schedule, I think they're still meeting. Now they're meeting on the fourth Thursday, or is it third? It's not a Wednesday. I know that.
And that's why I had to step down for Thursdays. I can't do Thursdays.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, first of all, thank you, Mr. Marshall. That's in our existing bylaws, and so we'll have an amendment to the bylaws to reflect actually when the Historic Preservation Commission meets, which is the fourth Thursday of each month. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Garitano?
I was gonna say, maybe we just have to have a lottery, you know?
Rotating members.
Well, I think maybe I will make another comment. I do appreciate Councilmember Helfrey stepping up. I think the last time we ran into this similar situation where there was silence, and I think you tried your best, and that's something that maybe we can, if folks are concerned about overcommitting, maybe we can kind of try to split it up a little bit where we could have somebody do it for a few months and then give them a break if that works better. I will tell you that there's a lot of energy with the Historic Preservation Commission. I believe Commissioner Rubis was a part of that group there. And they're a big part of most major events in our city. And, there's a lot of great momentum there. So I think there's flexibility. I believe they do Zoom as well if needed. So, I would say if anybody's thinking about it, maybe that might help make that decision a little bit easier. So, Director Vunich, is there anything else you want to maybe chime in or add? It sounds like you got an idea.
Well, Mr. Mayor, my idea is maybe your idea. Maybe it's done on a rotating basis per your all's availability on a fourth Thursday of the month. I don't know if it's ordinance requirement or just the bylaws itself. So, Mr. Young, have you ever heard of that where the liaison may change from meeting to meeting, or if there's a particular need, they meet once or twice and then it changes? Does that sound so far out?
I have not heard of it, but it certainly doesn't mean it can't be done. I mean, I think that is definitely something that if we build it into our bylaws and is consistent with the code, we can certainly do.
With the permission of the commission, I'll ask Mr. Young to assist the department and we'll investigate that. So maybe if there's 8 citizen members, maybe each of you can do a meeting and maybe a couple of you can double up. But I will say the Historic Preservation Commission generally doesn't meet in December, so it's 11 times a year. And as Mayor Garitano mentioned, and Mr. Marshall can attest, we're doing a historic preservation plan, the first of the city. We have a lot of activities underway, so they're busy, but it's a good busy. It's not a lot of homework for you all, but certainly you can see tangible results from your efforts. So Mr. Young and the department will investigate it. We'll let you know maybe at the next meeting.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vunich. All right. And with that, motion to adjourn.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I know you all I want to go home too. I have a question. On this, I was reading these earlier where it said items not ready for action. And the first one says did I read this right? That it's been open since 800 years or something? And why is that still showing up on there?
Well, it is a skilled care facility. It was authorized by St. Louis County via conditional use permit. Originally, it actually served as a skilled care facility. It was a welcome addition to the community when the city incorporated. Unfortunately, it was sold to a gentleman that now resides in California, and he basically turned it into a location to warehouse people that no one wanted. So those people would traverse all over that area out on Old State Road, relieving themselves on Old State Road, Ridge Road. And so make a long story short, St. Louis County and City of Wildwood shut it down. We were going to demolish it at the cost to the taxpayers, and we've basically run into some impediments to that. So we're in a bit of a stalemate, but the intent, with the permission of the commission via motion and second, be to remove it from the agenda because there is no way at this stage in the condition of the building which we want to basically accommodate any use of it.
So, I mean, it's to review the CUP, but so isn't the CUP done now because the business is no longer in existence?
County CUPs, the land.
Oh.
They place no review cycle or sunset. So it's there until the city were to remove it. And every time we talked about that, the attorney representing the property owner, he is an attorney, generally him, calls and said, I'm going to sue you all. And at one point, he threatened to sue all of us individually, that being the city administrator, the mayor, the director of planning, director of public works, et cetera, et cetera. So he's not a pleasant person to work with.
So it just keeps appearing? I mean, in perpetuity until he sells the land?
Well, that's a good question. We could start the condemnation process again.
Well, I'm not looking to create extra work for you. It just piqued my interest. I really am not. I mean, I don't care about it enough to make you do all that work. I was just curious.
Well, it probably should be done because we maintain the property. We cut the grass a couple of times a month. So it looks presentable on Ridge Road. And there is a functional skilled care facility right next door that actually has people that live there. And so we try to keep it passable. We also have to board up the building because the kids like to get into it. And so we're spending taxpayers' dollars to keep it from becoming a nuisance or problem property, or more of a problem property than it is. But condemning it, doing the demolition has a significant cost to it. So I say we've kind of in a holding pattern.
Okay, well, thank you for answering my question.
Commissioner Rubis?
Spending tax. Can we put a lien on the property?
We sure can. And that's something that's probably an idea that we should talk with Mr. Young about. And we have records of all the expenditures over the course of past whatever number of years. And eventually we could basically call them. Liens are usually paid off when the property's sold, but you don't have to wait. We could pursue the ownership of the property and try to sell it. I'm sure somebody would like to do a residential development there. It's a large enough parcel to actually generate a number of home sites.
All right, so you piqued my curiosity as well. But so I've got Google pulled up here. Is AEGIS Health and Rehab, is that the skill care facility that's operating?
I think so.
All right.
It used to be called Oak Forest. I know it's been sold. I just don't follow the change.
Yeah, well, I mean, the building right there is on its fourth name?
Yeah.
And it went up after I was on the commission?
Yeah. I can tell you a story about the original developer and how he swore to our planning and zoning commission and city council, they were in for the long haul. And the last nail wasn't pounded in there and they had already sold it. So.
But so the building in question, is it this one to the right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like a 2-story brick building. There's a water tower on it. The water tower has 3 service providers for telecommunication purposes. So somebody's getting some money.
Well, I like Jim's idea of the lien. I think something ought to be done, especially if we're spending my money on maintaining it.
Well, Mr. Young's on a Zoom tonight and he's heard what you've said and we can talk about it in more detail and then eventually city council will make that decision.
Yeah, I've been kind of wondering about that too, because that's been, 15 years now.
Like I say, the gentleman is difficult to deal with, but that should not preclude us doing the right thing.
Motion to adjourn then?
Thank you.
All right, motion by Commissioner Rubis, second by Commissioner Helfrey. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you. Yeah. My ex-girlfriend, we're talking